The story takes place in 1986, when I was just 7 years old. I was very naughty when I was small and often did some dangerous things. No matter how many times my mother criticized me, I could not control my curiosity. It was a summer noon and my mother was cleaning the house. My sister went to a school activity, and I felt very bored by myself. During the last week, my father bought a second-hand closet because he thought it was cheap. The closet was made of very good wood, so it was very heavy. Because the closet door had some problems that prevented it from working properly, it was temporarily placed in the utility room of our house. In order to let the smell in the closet dissipate quickly, the door has been supported by a wooden board. At that time, I saw that the door of the utility room was open, which aroused my curiosity. Curious, I walked into the closet. Suddenly, the plank on the door fell off and the closet door was locked. To make matters worse, the closet fell straight down. It was so dark all around that I could barely see my fingers. The space inside the closet was quite small, and the lack of air circulation made me feel suffocated. My breathing became difficult and the scene made me feel extremely scared and desperate. I pushed and shoved desperately against the closet and my fingers were cut. The weight of the closet prevented me from moving it, and every effort went nowhere. The air became thinner and thinner, and my breathing became rapid and difficult, as if an invisible force was gripping my throat. My consciousness began to blur and my thinking became confused. I didn't know how much longer I could hold on. I put my head in my hands, tears mixing with the blood. Time became a blur and I felt like I was moving away from the real world. It was as if I could hear voices in the distance, the sound of my parents calling out anxiously. But this voice became more and more distant. Finally, my consciousness was completely swallowed by darkness. I could no longer distinguish reality from the dream world. When I regained consciousness again, I found myself leaving my own body. I was floating in the sky above the house. From this height, I looked down on the entire backyard and house, and could clearly see my mother's figure. My father had also returned home, and I could hear their conversation. "Where is the son?" the father asked the mother. "Playing outside," mother replied. Father looked out the window. "I wished he could see me," I shouted, but my voice seemed to be swallowed by the wind and could not reach them. I watched my father anxiously, hoping he would sense my presence. My body was trapped in the utility room, but they didn't know that. I could only pray silently inside, "Dad, please find me." They did not notice that I was floating over the house. I watched as my father turned away from the window and walked to other rooms. I felt disappointed and helpless. Although I couldn't communicate with them directly, I didn't give up. I decided to take a more direct approach to get their attention. I wrote on the glass of the window with my hand. I wrote my name and a message asking for help, hoping they would see it. They still didn't notice my presence. Just then, I felt a strong force pulling me backwards. I was traveling between universes at a very fast speed. This rapid movement made me feel extremely uncomfortable, and I could only close my eyes tightly. Time became blurred and I couldn't tell exactly how much space I had traveled. Eventually, I felt the speed begin to slow down gradually. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a peaceful and beautiful valley. Surrounded by tall trees, the valley was flowing with clear streams. I breathed in the pure air, and it all made me feel calm. I noticed that the valley was filled with all kinds of beautiful wildflowers. Curious, I walked down to the river, which was glowing with rocks. I picked up a stone and I found that it was translucent and very soft, completely different from the stones on earth. They seemed to have a magical power that made me feel at ease and calm. When I touched the water, my clothes did not get wet, as if the water here was a magical substance. The water here is so buoyant that I lay on the surface and found myself not sinking, but floating gently on the water. This feeling is really very wonderful. I also found myself able to walk on the surface of the water. I felt the current gently embracing me and seemed to be dancing with me. I decided to dive into the water. I found that underwater I was still able to breathe freely, as if the waters provided me with endless power. In this mysterious underwater world, I saw various forms of fish. They shimmered and shined, forming a beautiful picture. Some fish had gorgeous feathers, as if they were peacocks in the water. Some fish have transparent bodies, like underwater elves. There are also some fish with gorgeous scales and streamlined bodies, just like a work of art. I chased them and admired their grace and magic. The river was also filled with all kinds of exotic plants. I was attracted by one of the plants, whose branches were covered with various attractive fruits. I plucked one of the fruits. The fruit had a very smooth appearance and gave off a tantalizing aroma. I couldn't help but put it into my mouth. It tasted very sweet, and the taste of this fruit made me feel happy and satisfied. I saw that a new fruit was growing in the place where I had just picked it. It was growing fast in its original place. I was shocked and curious, so I picked it again. This time the fruit I picked tasted completely different from the previous one. It gave off a fresh aroma. I was delighted to find that a third fruit quickly grew in that spot. It was as if these fruits would never die. As I was about to continue tasting the fruits of other plants, a man in a white robe appeared beside me. His appearance took me by surprise and I stopped moving my hands. This man had bright eyes. He smiled and reminded me, "Son, the fruit is delicious, but you can't eat too much of it." I was surprised because he seemed to know what I was thinking inside. I stopped to continue picking the fruit. I looked at him and asked curiously, "Why can't I eat too much? These fruits are so delicious, shouldn't we enjoy them to the fullest?" The man smiled and said, "Son, there is a limit to what the world can give us. Greed and excessive desire will often bring bad consequences. While enjoying them, you should also learn to protect and cherish them. Only in moderate taste can you truly experience their beauty." I nodded silently. I sat with him by the river. The man continued, "Son, you didn't come to this place by accident. Every experience has its meaning. When you are lost, you need to learn to look within for guidance, because the answers often lie deep within yourself." I asked, "Can you tell me more about the wisdom of growing up? I want to be able to better understand myself and the world." The man smiled and nodded, then he slowly said, "Life is a journey, full of ups and downs and challenges. Don't be afraid of failures and difficulties, they are opportunities for you to grow. Learn to learn from them and persist in pursuing your dreams. When you are lost, you need to learn to listen to your inner voice. The inner heart is your truest compass and it will give you the right direction. At the same time, believe in your own abilities, face challenges bravely, and you will find that you have unlimited potential." This man finally said to me, "Son, you have been here long enough, you must go back." I understood that he was right and that my family was anxiously searching for me. I looked at the man with gratitude and respect in my heart. I felt his wisdom and kindness as he gave me guidance when I was lost. I replied firmly, "Thank you for the reminder, I will return to my family." He pointed into the distance and a bright light emanated from his hand. The light was warm and bright. I walked toward that light. The light surrounded me and I felt a warmth. I closed my eyes, and it was as if I was traveling through a tunnel of time and space. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on Earth. Surrounding me were familiar streets and familiar landscapes. I was suspended above the house. I saw that my father had finally found the utility room. He saw the closet fall on the floor and my mother rushed over to help. They struggled to lift the closet up. I could feel their tension and worry. Suddenly, a mysterious force pulled me back into my body. I breathed fresh air again. My father gently laid me down on the couch, worry and anger intertwined on his face. He told me to drink more water. I lay on the couch, my mind filled with confusion. My mother continued to clean the room as if nothing had happened. This frustrated me, and I longed for more attention and love. I wanted them to truly understand the fear and confusion that I was experiencing. I didn't intend to tell them about it at first. I knew I had a habit of lying as a child, and I was worried they would think I was playing another prank. However, when I went to the kitchen to get water, I saw the name I had written on the window glass earlier. I decided to tell my father what I had experienced. I took my father to the window and I tried to tell him what I had experienced. I described how it felt like I was floating in the air and how I had come to a strange valley. However, just as I expected, my father did not believe what I said. He frowned and said angrily, "How many times have I told you, kids don't lie?" He slapped me and I felt hurt and aggrieved. I felt very disappointed and frustrated. I truly hoped that my father would believe me and understand what I was going through. But the reality was harsh and he was suspicious of what I said. I am 65 years old and my fear of death is not as strong as it used to be. Recently, I have spent a lot of time watching videos and reading articles about near-death experiences. These videos and articles have had a great impact on me and have made me re-examine my experiences as a child. What I experienced as a child has always been confusing and frightening to me. The experience left me feeling overwhelmed and confused. But as I got older, I began to understand the importance of these things. As I grew older, I appreciated each moment more. I came to realize that the true meaning of life is not just the pursuit of materialism and merit, but the sharing of warmth and hope with others. This experience made me realize that each person has his or her own journey. Each of us will face death. But that does not mean we should live in fear. Instead, we should experience life in a more profound way, cherish every moment, be grateful for what we have, and give back to the world with love.
The story happened in the summer of 1989, when I was only 8 years old. One morning, both my parents went to work. Only my sister and I were left at home. There was a fish pond near our house. I heard that there were a lot of fish in it, so we decided to go there to play. We walked along the path for a while and soon reached the fish pond. We squatted by the fish pond and watched the fish swimming in the water carefully. They jumped out of the water as if they were saying hello to us. We decided to catch some fish. I found 2 long, thin sticks and tied my clothes to the top of them. I noticed a small red fish in the fish pond. I was fascinated by its beauty and decided to try to catch it. I stepped on a rock and tried to get close to the fish. Suddenly, I lost my balance and I fell into the fish pond. I felt very scared. My sister realized the danger I was in and screamed for help. She tried to find help, but there was no one else around. I felt my whole body become cold, as if I had fallen into a refrigerator. Suddenly, my body jerked violently and shuddered uncontrollably. Each jerk was like an electric current passing through my body, causing me to twist my body in pain. This violent jerking made me feel frightened. My chest felt a heavy pressure, as if an invisible hand was pressing on my lungs. I felt like my chest was sinking in, unable to expand and breathe. This suffocating sensation made me more and more desperate. My vision began to blur, and darkness gradually spread. My heart was stopping, becoming weaker and weaker with each beat. I tried to stay conscious, but my body became weaker and weaker, and my mind gradually blurred. Finally, I lost all sense of the outside world and sank into darkness. Time suddenly stopped. I don't know how long it took, but I suddenly had a feeling of complete relief. All the pain and discomfort disappeared. My heart stopped beating, and there was no longer the rhythm of my pulse. I saw my body suspended in the water, floating gently. There was no expression on my face, neither surprise nor fear. I had been freed from the bondage of my physical body and entered a supernatural space. In this state, I felt immense freedom. There was no pain and no bondage. I felt at one with the universe and connected to everything. There are no limitations of time and space. It is hard to describe this state in words. I feel surrounded by love and peace. I am clearly aware that before becoming human, I was a being made of pure light. I felt that my essence was pure and innocent, in perfect harmony with my present state. Suddenly, I heard a voice, a warm voice. It told me that everything would be all right. This voice gave me infinite comfort, and I felt that I was no longer alone and afraid. Suddenly a bright light shone down. As the light gradually spread, I saw an angel dressed in a white robe appear in front of me. The angel emitted a divine glow. The angel stretched out her arm and gently held me. When her hand touched me, I felt an incomparably pure power. The angel lifted me from the water. I felt her energy pass through my body. She held me, and together we ascended into the sky. As we floated in midair, I could see the fish pond below, which was getting farther and farther away from us. The angel seemed to be silently telling me that everything would be okay, that I would be sheltered and protected. In her company, I felt very relaxed. My body felt light and free, and I was able to breathe freely. I felt my soul was cleansed and restored to a state of wholeness and health. After we had flown some distance, a bright light appeared ahead of us. As we approached, the light gradually surrounded me and a warmth engulfed me. The light was brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt my eyes. After the angel said goodbye to me, she disappeared into a glow. I was floating there alone. Suddenly, I saw the figure of a man approaching me. When he came close enough, I felt a strong wave of love, full of warmth and care. This love was so strong that words cannot accurately describe it. I was glad I wasn't really dead. But where was I now? He told me that he was here to help me with my problems. Even though I was in an unknown place, I felt incredibly at ease in the company of this man. First, he showed me my past life, and the picture before me was like a movie. I remember thinking, how bad can this be? I was just a kid. I saw a bad thing I had done. I was playing at home when I suddenly saw a little bird resting on the windowsill. I decided to throw a toy ball at it to see how it would react. My action caused the bird to be frightened. It flapped its wings to escape, but unfortunately hit the glass with a crashing sound. I realized that my decision had caused harm to other creatures. I saw another thing. I was playing near my home. I noticed an old grandmother pushing her shopping cart. She looked like she was having a very hard time. I ran up to the grandmother and asked her if she needed help. She smiled and nodded her head. I pushed the shopping cart as hard as I could and made it through the steep uphill section. She took my hand and expressed her gratitude to me. I felt so proud and happy because I knew I had brought help to others. This experience taught me that even as a child, I can give love and support to others through acts of kindness. No matter what our age, we all have the ability to make a positive difference. With the end of this scene, the entire movie stopped playing. I felt inner peace and contentment because I got the answers to all my questions. I began to reflect on what I had just seen. I became acutely aware of my past actions and the results they had brought about. I saw how my actions had affected the emotions and lives of others. Of all the good things that have been done, I could feel the gratitude and joy of those who benefited. However, I also saw my own wrongdoings, such as damaging a neighbor's window and hurting a bird, which caused me deep guilt and remorse. This experience taught me valuable lessons from my past life. It was at this time that I thought about my family. I shuddered to think how my mother would have reacted if she had learned that I had passed away. I shuddered to imagine her heartbroken expression and endless sorrow. I longed to be with my mother again, to feel her embrace, to hear her voice again. I miss the things that used to bring me joy. I don't want this incident to cause psychological shadows and damage to my sister. She is so innocent and still needs my company and protection. I hope she can continue to grow up happily. I told the angel my inner thoughts, and he said he would respect my choice. However, the angel's words confused me. He told me not to tell anyone about this experience, and that time would give the answer. This statement left me wondering why I could not share this experience. I did not get an answer from him. Perhaps the angel wanted me to keep this experience deep inside. Because this experience was personal to me and needed to be understood and comprehended by me. At the same time, I was able to observe what was happening on Earth. I saw that my mother was very anxious, and she seemed to sense that something was wrong. She ran back home as fast as she could. My body had been fished out of the water by a neighbor. My lips were purple and my mother immediately began to give me artificial respiration. Her eyes were filled with fear and desperation, but she didn't give up. The whole scene was filled with a sense of urgency. My soul seemed to be able to feel my mother's love. I wished I could return to her side and feel her warmth as soon as possible. The neighbors around me watched the scene nervously, each one silently praying for a miracle. My soul felt a powerful suction. An invisible force guided me back to my body. It was like a very thin thread that carried my soul through the border of space-time. The process of going back was not easy. I could feel the connection between my soul and body being restored. And a new connection was being established between me and the real world. My senses gradually became clearer. My vision began to become clear. I could feel my body again. An energy gradually spread from the top of my head to my whole body. Finally, after a tense and long wait, I began to feel a faint heartbeat. My body began to make subtle movements. My mother's eyes were filled with joy. At that very moment, I opened my eyes and saw my mother's joyful expression. I had successfully returned to her side. There were cheers and applause from the neighbors, celebrating this miraculous moment. I returned from the brink of death, having experienced the preciousness of life and the greatness of a mother's love. I knew that I had been given a second chance, and I would cherish that chance and live it gratefully. At that time, I was still relatively young and I could not understand what death meant. I knew I had left my body and entered another world. This experience made me realize that our body is only a temporary container, just like a crab will keep replacing its shell as it grows. When we no longer need it, we will leave it and our soul will move on. This made me start to reflect on the meaning and value of life. Our body is only a part of our existence, it does not represent the whole of us. After death, our soul will move on and enter another world to continue living. Death is not the end, but a transformation. It is our transition from one form of existence to another. Over the years, I wished I could share my experiences with my family. However, their reactions made me realize that keeping silent might be a better option. It seemed like a crazy story to them, and I would have had a hard time believing it myself if I hadn't experienced it myself. When I was 41 years old, I told a pastor about my experience. We sat together and I told him what had happened. He listened to my experience, and his face was filled with concentration. After I finished speaking, the pastor told me how blessed I was and that it was a gift from God. He saw my experience as a divine experience and a reflection of God's care for me. It was deeply comforting to hear him say that. It was clear to me that this experience was the most authentic experience I had ever experienced and that it transcended everything in my real life. I hope that by sharing my experience, more people will understand that God's love is unconditional.